Well, Francis, Merry Christmas.
How are you doing? Thank you. Merry Christmas to you.
I am guessing that, and I'm not going to make you tell me how many Christmases you've led, but you had a very, very long tenure in the pulpit. So I'm guessing you've led more Christmas services than most people can claim that they've led. That you've helped, I think, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people over the years enter into the mystery and the hope of this season, because Christmas seems to be one of those times during the year that people actually show some interest in attending worship. And we know that things don't have to be factual to be true, and that the way the Christmas story is told to us in the Bible is clearly not factual. But I'm wondering, there must be some truth to this story, even though it's not factual. There must be some truth to this child being born in a manger that keeps drawing people to the story, that gives them maybe a little bit of hope. I mean, I often say we need to separate the mystery from the history. And if we quit worrying about what the history is, and we dare to enter into the mystery of the season, we might experience something meaningful. So I'm kind of curious for you, what is that truth of the Christmas story, or what is the mystery that you're inviting people to enter into?
It is a mystery, but it's also history, in the sense that we are here. We're part of the history.
Right.
So we are part of the ongoing story. The mystery, or the mythic part of the story, says there were wise men. So we're all part of that mythic story, part of the passage of time, but also part of the people who are travelers. We're all travelers from point A to point B. And what do we carry with us? And the story of Christmas says we've got something very important to carry with us. And that's a fact. The fact is, we can speak a good word. We can convey a good mood, a good emotion. Christmas is about good feelings, good emotions, people reaching out from where they are, through the screen, beyond the screen, to people in America, Australia, far beyond. We're reaching out. And as we reach out, that's more than mystery. That's fact. There we are, talking to each other across thousands of miles, thousands of kilometers. So that's good. And now what will we talk about?
So in some ways, what I'm hearing you say is somehow that story becomes part of our story.
Oh, very much.
Yeah, it becomes part of that story.
So
or that story in some ways informs our story.
That story that is back there and then becomes the story here and now, as we talk about it, as we reach out to each other, as we cross the empty space between us and say we're both talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
So that becomes a present reality as we talk to each other.
It kind of reminds me, Meister Eckhart shared that beautiful phrase where he said, we are all meant to be mothers of God.
Yeah.
For God is always needing to be born. And then somehow, certainly right now, hope, a little bit of hope is needing to be born. A little bit of light is needing to be born. Certainly in America, healing, reconciliation is needing to be born. And I'm curious whether this story uh, at a time when a lot of people are just in despair, can give us some sense of hope that something new is possible.
And the key word there, I think, is something new is possible. If we can only pause for a moment and say, we're rearranging the things, it's like me rearranging things on my desk. They've always been there, and now I'm going to put something new in the middle of it. And when I put something new in the middle, the whole thing changes. The whole configuration changes. And the mystery of Christmas is a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Something is put there in front of us, and it changes the way we see ourselves, the way we see each other, the way we talk to each other. A new way of being with each other is the message and the essential word of Christmas.
Kind of reminds me, I mean, you mentioned the wise men traveling that road, but when they encountered the child, when they encountered the mystery, when they encountered the sacred, I've always loved that it says they chose a different road home. You know, and some say in a dream they were inspired somehow to travel a different road.
A new road.
Yeah.
And that's, again, as essential, the basic thrust of Christmas. New things are about to happen. And as soon as we put the story there in front of us, everything is likely to change. The biblical text says, behold, I make all things new. So can we keep making things new, creating new things, being new to each other? That's what we aim to be.
I love how the biblical text also then kind of goes on to say, do you see it?
Do you see it?
You know, I think that's part of the challenge as well of do we see the opportunity for something new?
And of course, we then have to add the next paragraph. What do you make of it?
Yeah.
You see it? Now we need to say, what does it mean for us? What does it mean for other people? Does it mean anything? Because we know all the words from repeat, 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 repeat. But how do we make those words new again? How do we make the story speak something new to us again and again and again?
You know, I think that's why I love John's gospel. You know, John's gospel doesn't, there's no wise men, there's no baby, there's no Mary and Joseph, there's no donkey shepherds. But we're offered this incredible poetry. There is a light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. I mean, what a message for right now. There is a light that shines in the darkness. And in a year where it seems like the darkness is going to overwhelm us, to have some confidence that the darkness cannot overcome us.
And of course, it goes, the same gospel talks about the Word.
Yeah.
In the beginning was the Word. The Word can change everything. As soon as you speak the Word, what word will you speak? How will you speak it? What will it mean? And how will it change things? The Word comes and it changes everything. Behold, I make all things new. The Word.
There's actually a story about a performance artist who wrote a short story, I think 1,000 words, and he put an ad on Craigslist or Facebook or something, inviting people to tattoo one word from his story on their flesh. You know, the word became flesh. So he actually, believe it or not, he had like 10,000 people volunteering to get a tattoo with a word from his story on their bodies. And then he had them show up in a park. And he got them all in line so that his story could be told. And it could only be told with the word that they each brought to the park. And I'm often kind of inspired and thinking to myself, well, gosh, what word would I want to tell? You know, if I had to put one word on my flesh, what word would I want to tell? I know if I volunteered for that, I'd probably get the or end or something like that. But I often think that's inspiring to think of what's the word that you would want to speak and tell right now.
That's a challenge, isn't it? To think, what is the key word? I think the key word for me is now. We're here now. Tomorrow, we may not be here. Next year, we may not be here, but we're here now. And the now is critical to the whole presentation of Christmas, because you read the story and it says, but now. So it too concentrates on that one word, now. Now things can be different. Now things can be made new. Now. So it's the present word. Does that make sense?
The poet Rumi said, now is where love breathes. And I've always found that because we tend to be anywhere else but now.
Yes.
But if love has an opportunity to be born, if love has an opportunity to breathe, if love has an opportunity to make a difference, if love has an opportunity to help us find a different road, it's only now.
I suppose ultimately the only time that is important is our time now. And if we miss it, it's over.
Yeah.
So our time now is so critically important, the now.
Leo Tolstoy said, the only power you have is right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I could wish that I moved this computer yesterday.
Yeah.
I might hope that I will move it tomorrow, but I can only move it right now.
Yeah. And I wish I did something yesterday, or I wish I didn't do something yesterday. So that time factor plays a critical part in all of our thinking. But the Christmas now says, now things can be different. So the other part of the Christmas story is the wise men coming from where they were to be present to another situation. So they travel, they're travelers. And it touches something in all of us, that we're all travelers from where we've come from to be right here, present now. And what will we do in our now? What will we make of our now as we travel? What do we bring to our now? We bring a word. We can bring a word of kindness, of hope, of goodness, a word of pleasure, a word of meeting. We meet and say, hello, we're here now.
You know, one of my favorite, in my church, every Christmas Eve, there's a point where we light a candle off the Christ candle, and then we pass that light one to another. I'm really going to miss it because we're doing worship online. And we actually invited people in the congregation to film themselves holding a candle and then moving their candle off camera. And then the next person appears. So it'll look like we're lighting one to another. And we sing Silent Night. But there's a moment we turn off all of the lights. There's that moment where you're holding the candle, singing Silent Night. So that story from long time ago, somehow for me, I always get caught in the mystery of the now. And in that moment, the hard edges of the world seem just a little softer. In that moment, something awakens in me. You know, that more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible, you know, the more beautiful world where the hungry are fed and the homeless have a place to sleep and goodness and kindness are everything. That more beautiful world just almost seems a little bit more within reach. And I dare to believe in that moment that love is stronger than hate. So to me, that's where I get that sense of, well, yeah, the history of the story is over 2,000 years ago. But the mystery of the story and the power of the story is now.
Right where we are, as we talk about it, we bring the past magically almost into the present. And we're talking as if, no, in reality, it is present to us. It is our present reality. No longer is the mystery, it's real. And that's, in its own way and many ways, is marvelous.
There's a poet, Anne Weems, who said the Christmas spirit. The Christmas spirit is the hope that tenaciously clings to the heart.
Oh, yes.
Announcing in the face of any indoors slammed in your face, any Herods the world can produce, any dark nights of the soul, that all things are still possible.
Right.
I love the idea of that Christmas spirit of hope, tenaciously clinging to our hearts. What are you hopeful for?
Hope. You're saying hope. Hope.
Yeah. Where do you find hope these days?
It's a very important question. But there are several of those emotions: hope, kindness, goodness, joy. See those and you say, there it is. Almost missed it. Then it comes again. Just when we thought it had disappeared, it reappears. It keeps coming back. Behold, I make all things new again and again and again. New, 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 new. That's a tremendous message. And is that mystery? Is that fact? I don't mind what it is. It's a reality. Very important reality. It can recur in our lives and we say, I've got it for a moment. I had it for a moment. I can have it again.
I love what you just said, where you can almost miss it.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the story of the shepherds, and somehow, you know, they got it, you know. And I wonder how many people that were near the fields, again, I'm not taking the story literally, but if we look at this metaphorically, you know, somehow the shepherds experienced this mystery that led them to the child. But how many people that night missed it? How many people that night were distracted or busy or?
Well, we have to look at ourselves and say, did we see it? Did we see it? Did it mean anything to us? Will it come again? The fact that we saw it once, we hope it will come again. So hope says good things happen and can happen again. And we can be part of that good thing, those good things happening. The wise men, you see, had at one point had nothing. But what did they bring? They brought a word and said, here I am, here it is. The word is speaking to you. So we need to let that happen. A word can make a huge difference. a kind word, a good word, a healing word. Put in many words in front of the word, and they can tell a story of how our life is lived. The wise men carried something. And I said, here it is. Now you carry it.
I'm curious, one of the phrases that you would often use, you would use the word presence. And you would often say, the presence is with you. You know, I'm curious about, some of the language around Christmas is the child's name was Emmanuel. This idea of God with us, this idea of presence with us, this idea of somehow the sacred infused in everything. What do you think of that whole concept of God with us, presence with us?
It's really quite magical in a sense. God is with us. He came and dwelt among us, full of grace and truth. It says not only did he come and dwell among us, but he had a certain character, grace and truth. If only we could all embrace that and say, there it is. The indwelling presence. Yes, frequently I'd say, we are in the presence.
Yeah.
We're in the presence. And that presence is, what is it? Full of grace and truth. Beautiful words.
I love one of my favorite stories is this man came home from the cemetery with his young 4-year-old son. His wife had just died from cancer. And they'd come from the cemetery. It was like 6 o'clock at night, and he was devastated, just devastated with grief. And he didn't know what to do but go to bed. So he took his young son to bed with him, and he was laying with his back away from his son and just devastated. You know, he's trying to hide his tears so his son wouldn't see him crying. And the son was just really restless, kind of just wiggling all over in the bed. And finally the son said, "Dad, if you would turn your face towards me, I think I can go to sleep."
Huh.
And so the father turned his face towards his son, and they touched foreheads, and they kind of matched their breath. And within a minute, the little boy was asleep. And I sometimes think, you know, the mystery of Christmas is this idea that the presence, the sacred presence, the love that is at the source of all there is, love's face is turned towards us so that we might then turn our face and our hearts towards one another. And I wonder if that's kind of what Christmas is all about.
Well, if it is, that's a great story. Great story. Turn and face each other. Turn and be towards each other rather than against each other. You know, there's the old saying that we often have 3 ways of relating to each other: towards, away from, against. I'd commend to everybody the important thing of being towards each other. Turn towards. Look at me. Do you see me? And as soon as we see, I recognize you. From years and years back, I've known who you are. There you are. And here we are talking to each other across the oceans, and we're saying, I see you. And when we see each other, we say, there it is, a presence. And it's a good presence.
That's really, I mean, to me, that's really beautiful. That I think one of the messages of Christmas is this idea that somehow in this child being born, that all of life is sacred. And I remember Naomi Tutu, the daughter of Desmond Tutu, spoke in my church one day. And I remember vividly, she said, to love is to see, and to be loved is to be seen. And I love that sense of turning towards each other and seeing each other. I just spoke at something called City Club, and they asked me to speak on civility, because there's very little of that in America right now.
Huh.
And I began my talk and I said, I think civility is too low of a bar. I don't really want to live in a community where our primary goal is to tolerate each other. I think a greater goal should be to rehumanize each other, to be able to see the humanity in each other again, because that to me is sort of what's missing.
Of course, that is basic to Christmas. How do we get our humanity to be a better humanity?
Yeah.
We can talk about all the old religious words, and people say, oh, we've heard all that before. We know the words, but as soon as we stop and say, but how do we get humanity to be a better humanity? How do we all become a better humanity to each other? That's a task. And it requires a lot of attention, because so easily we can forget our humanity and become we turn into gravel. Humanity is gone and gravel has come in. That's rough. Softness of humanity is what we all search for, and what we all desire, I think, is the softness of our humanity. When we see it, we say, oh, that's good. Well, if it's good, then say it, do it, be it, all of it.
I often think courage is being willing to walk with a tender heart in a world that lives like a clenched fist. And I think Christmas kind of invites us to rediscover that tender heart.
Yeah.
And it's not weakness, but probably the greatest strength there is.
Yeah, and it also, to take your image, it reminds us to loosen our clenched fist. Lay the hand down open on the desk and say, there I am, present, a good presence. Whereas if it's a clenched fist, there I am, present, and I'm angry, or I'm furious, or I'm bitter. Open your hands and lay them on the desk and say, here we are, present, in a different way, a better way.
Well, I think the myth of the story is the divine did not come in power and might, but in the vulnerability of a helpless child.
Yeah.
And there's something just really beautiful about that. Reminds me of one other story. I'm just full of stories. I apologize for that. But I just love the story of a Christmas pageant of Wally, who is a beautiful child who lives with Down syndrome. And he was thrilled to get the innkeeper. So he had practiced he had one line, there's no room. Practiced it for weeks. It was time for the night of the pageant, and he was behind the inn door, super excited. He was ready, caught up in the magic of the moment. Joseph and Mary come up and knock on the door. Wally was ready, he flings the door open, says his line, there's no room, but he's looking straight ahead so he's not distracted. There's no room. And Joseph says, surely there must be a corner. And for the first time, Wally looks down and sees Joseph, looks into Mary's eyes and sees how tired she is. Now at that point, the script says he was supposed to slam the door. But there was a pause, a long pause. The pageant director tried to whisper, "Wally, shut the door." But he was caught up in the moment. And when Joseph put his arm around Mary and started to walk away, the pageant took an unexpected turn. Because Wally yelled out, "Joseph, come back. She can have my room."
Marvelous.
And I love that. So overcome with love, softness, tenderness, he abandoned the script and a new story was told.
Gave her his room.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marvelous story.
Yeah, I love that.
Marvelous story. Good.
Well, let me finish with Howard Thurman, you know, the great theologian and civil rights activist. He used the phrase, the work of Christmas. You know, he said, you know, when the angels, the songs of the angels have stilled and the star is gone and the shepherds are back in their flock, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among us, to make music in the heart. So it's Christmas 2020. What do you think is the most important work of Christmas for us this year?
What is the most important work to do? I suppose I'd like to add one phrase to the phrases that you just mentioned. You could have added, and clean up the mess. So that's what we should be doing, to clean up the mess and offer a new place, a new way of being there. There's plenty of mess around in your country, in my country. Now it's time to clean up a little bit of the mess and put something new in place. Be a new configuration. And we look at it and say, oh, it's different. That's different from what it was. And that's precisely what we want Christmas to say to us. That's precisely what Christmas does say to us. Things can now be different. Different, better, good, beautiful.
There's a writer by the name of Glennon Doyle. I love her writing, and she says, we may not be able to fix the world, but the very least we can do is put our damn grocery cart back.
Good.
Clean up the mess. Which what I hear in that is, you know, do our part.
Yeah.
Do what we can to mend, to heal, you know, our little part of the world.
Well, be open to the healing, because when you close yourself off from healing, close yourself off from joy, close yourself off from good things, not interested. That old stuff, we've heard it all before, but now we need to reopen it, relive it, recreate it, so it speaks to us again and again and again, perhaps in the old way, but perhaps in some new ways. Let it speak to us. I hope so.
Well, this was the best Christmas present that I could have this year. I really appreciate this chance to share some thoughts on Christmas, and I wish you the blessed Christmas, and may that mystery of hope find its way to you.
Well, you've taken my words already, I think, because I was going to say, here is the best Christmas. That this moment, this year, right now, I can wish you and your family and your people a good Christmas. Happy Christmas. Excellent. Make sure it's good.
Peace. Until the new year.
Very good.